Welcome in to another Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. My name is Gabe Anderson, and I'm joined, as always, by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
We're doing okay. It was a good season. Didn't end the way we wanted, but I mean, maybe it did. We had a pretty good. If you would have told me in the beginning of the year that's how it ended, I'd be okay with it probably.
Yeah, and unless you live under a rock, you know the Timberwolves lost Game 5 to the Dallas Mavericks, 123-104, ending their season. And some key stats from this game, and it was all about Kyrie and Luka. They shot 28 for 49, 72 points, 58% of their team's points, and 10 for 20 from three. I thought that in this game, once I saw Luka Doncic doing what he did in the first quarter, I basically gave up. I basically said they're going to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's kind of how it was. Like, he's a superstar. I mean, he's a superstar. He's on the path to being, those handful of guys called the greatest of all time. And he's like 24 years old. So
right.
We ran into a monster, and congratulations for them.
Yeah. Are you going to be rooting for the Mavs or the Celtics in the finals?
Neither.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really care. To be honest, I don't care who wins. I'm rooting for the offseason moves and that kind of excitement in the NBA more than anything.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that going forward. But I just had one more stat or a couple more stats from this game. Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Kyle Anderson. So basically, if you're running an 8-man rotation, that's basically your three off the bench. They went 5 for 21, 1 for 9 from three. And Kyle was the only one to hit a three. I think it was late in the third quarter. And another stat interesting, Nickeil Alexander-Walker from the field in this series, 28%, 18% from three. He only hit 3 threes in 5 games. So if that doesn't tell you that the Wolves, if they're going to make a run next year, need better off the bench, that should tell you everything.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a tricky situation. Our contracts and everything are so top heavy, and we're so far over the cap, we don't have really any way to improve our bench. Actually, we're probably going to lose some pieces. So yeah, we're in a tough spot. It's going to be interesting to see what Tim Connolly can do to improve this roster because, I don't think it was so much bad breaks, and there was some of that. For sure, we could have probably won this series, and who knows what happens, but. I kind of think we're playing on house money with our roster for a lot of the season, and we can make some improvements, I think.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it in a second, particularly the Karl-Anthony Towns. Was it his last game in a Wolves uniform? We'll talk about that in a second. But another thing, Naz Reid, when you have, and don't get me wrong, everyone loves Naz Reid for a good reason. He had 7 threes in what was that, game 2 in that loss, which, I mean, you win that game, you don't blow a 5-point lead with about a minute and a half to go. If you don't blow that, then we're talking about a game 6 back in Dallas, but that's neither here nor there. But Naz Reid in his last 2 games, first 3 games of the series, 17.3 points per game, on par with a 6th man of the year. Last 2 games of the series, 5.5 points per game. He had 6 and 5. When you have the player or the 6th man of the year and they're only putting up 5 or 6 points, that's not a recipe for success.
No, I mean, we had a lot of guys not step up this series. It was just kind of how it is. Like, Towns was terrible for, the first 3 games. McDaniels gave us next to nothing. Connolly didn't do much of anything, had a couple okay games. Our defenders like McDaniels and and even Edwards got absolutely handled the entire series by those 2 guards, taking their defensive value pretty much away. Yeah, Naz Reid didn't do what he needed to do. We just didn't play that well. I don't know if it was we were happy to make it there, hangover from beating Denver, um, maybe listening to the press saying like, well, we're the ones that are going to win it now after we beat. I don't know what it is, but we were never clicking. We never looked like we were playing the way we should. And maybe it was just Dallas's defense. Maybe they just had a better game plan to shut us down. But we looked pretty bad the whole series.
I think that this is Jason Kidd, his best coaching performance of his entire coaching career. Like I think he earned an extension. I think he earned everything that he's hyped up to be because he had some great defense on Anthony Edwards. It was double and make other players beat us. Like, for example, how many shots did Rudy Gobert take in the first quarter? 7. He had 7 shots in the first
Yeah,
quarter. That's not
and
really a recipe for success. And I know I've said that before, but I
yeah,
don't
in a
know.
way, But if out of those 7 shots, I think the total distance of them all were probably 14 feet combined.
Right.
So, and most of them were when Luca was on him. We were trying to punish him down low, trying to get early fouls, make him work both ways on switches. So, like, I know that was exaggerated by like the media and stuff saying, "Oh, Rudy's taking all these shots," but I mean, it's not like we were isolating him at the corner and letting him go to work. Like it was all dump downs and little lay-ins and stuff that he kind of blew some of them, but
Yep.
um, it's just we have our roster is, if it's anything, it's full of one-way guys, like Jaden McDaniels only plays defense. Rudy only plays defense. Like Edwards, I mean, he's a two-way guy, but Nas is kind of only offense. Like we have Towns is only offense, really. I mean, he did okay against Jokic by just kind of not hacking, just standing there, like just absorbing it. Yeah, we have a lack of two-way ability on a lot of our guys. Um, and it's something that'll be addressed. I think Tim Connolly, paid close attention not only to our roster, but watching what the Dallas roster could do versus the number one defense. I think you learn a lot from that.
Yeah, and I should mention just logistically, make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple. And in the comments, let us know who you're rooting for, Dallas or Boston. Let us know in the comments. But let's appreciate the Wolves for a little bit because
Yeah.
it really was one hell of a year. Second best record in franchise history. First sweep in team history, beat the defending champs. I mean,
I mean,
that's
we were
a
number one seed the whole year too. I mean, that's huge. I mean, not only was it a great record, but we dominated the West the entire year.
mm-hmm. We did dominate the entire year, and there were several times where, particularly when Karl Anthony Towns was out, where the Wolves could have easily fallen out of that race. And who knows, we fall to a 4 or 5 seed. Maybe we're playing Dallas in the first round, and maybe we don't even have the opportunity to go to rounds 2 and 3. But
Right.
to their credit, they kept it up. They kept pace with 2 really good teams, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and of course, as we saw, the Denver Nuggets, the defending champions. And on the last day of the season, had an opportunity to be the overall number 1 seed. Obviously, it didn't go our way, and Magic struck after that. But just a huge year for the Timberwolves and just a big building block going forward. And what we got to remember is that Anthony Edwards is only 22. Jane McDaniels is young. Now, obviously, Conley's older, but Nas young. And so we kind of got a core here that if we can just sprinkle in a couple good pieces, could be good for the long run.
For sure. I mean, it's amazing what we did. I thought we had an amazing year. The way that we've matured is kind of the thing that everybody wanted to talk about this year, is like we're showing maturity. That's what we wanted to show. I mean, we showed that by dominating the West the entire year and being consistent, like getting all these wins, with the meaningless little teams that used to beat us, all that stuff we beat. But talking about So, I mean, we made a big move forward in the franchise and got a good look at who we have on a roster and who we want to keep and who we might not want to keep. You're talking about Anthony Edwards at 22. When Luka was 22, he was also in the Western Conference Finals. So,
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
lost in 5. Same scenario.
lost in 5, and his roster at the time, like if you want to talk about the guys that were on his roster, were Porzingis, Jalen Brunson, Spencer Dinwiddie, Finney Smith. Those were all, and then those were all the main guys that were getting minutes other than Luka, and all those guys other than Luka are gone on this roster 3 years later. So it's not that unheard of to make big roster moves after having some success. You don't have to look that far to see how it happens. But you don't have to do that, but this is a different NBA these days.
Right. And we got a question here from Chris, our loyal listener, Chris,
Nice.
who I believe is in Australia. I believe he's across the pond, way across the pond on the other side of the world. Can you comment on losing 5 of our last 6 games at home? What do you think's behind that? Is it just you get more comfortable on the road? I know Chris Finch has talked about how there's less distractions on the road. Yeah. You don't get into the hype as much. It's kind of you against the world on the road versus a lot of people cheering you on at home. What do you think's behind that?
I think it's exactly that. I think it's the fact that when we get, a lot of times those home games came after some big wins because we were so successful on the road, and there was so much confidence coming home that we thought that we were going to just get easy wins because we're home. And I think there's a lot more distractions at home, like you said. On the road, you have a set practice, you have a team meal, you have, you get to the hotel, you check in, you do that. Everything's kind of scheduled like military wise. It's easy to stay focused and keep your mind on the task at hand. When you get home, a lot of these guys have babies, new kids, as a matter of fact, new babies, different people are pulling them in different directions. So, it could have been that. It definitely could have been that.
Yeah, it definitely could have been that. And I think that just comes with the territory. I mean, Rudy Gobert has never been in this situation. Anthony Edwards has never been in this situation. Karl Anthony Towns definitely hasn't been in this situation. Right. Really, the only person who's been in the situation where you're in the Western Conference Finals with a chance to go to the finals was Mike Conley, and that was like 10 years ago. So exactly. we got a bunch of guys who haven't been there before and are learning how to win at home, win on the road, and I think that will definitely come with time. And by the way, Chris did confirm it's 7:30 in Australia right now. So
beautiful. I'm glad. Good morning. I hope you have some what do y'all eat? Some of that weird spread that's made out of like vegetables or something like that for breakfast on some toast.
Put another shrimp on the barbie, as they say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, learning experience is huge for all of us. And I think they're going to learn something. I think it's really great that we got to play Luke and Kyrie, because a guy like Anthony Edwards can pull a lot of stuff out of Luka's game. He goes slow. He doesn't need to be, full speed downhill. He uses his body, his big, strong body. He knows how to get the calls. He knows how to kind of lean into guys. And I mean, as sad as it is, those little tricks are what help them win games.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And Luka Doncic just loves to flop and draw fouls. If Ant, like you said, can soak it all in, that can be a huge thing for us. So I got to ask you this question because I know you're dying to answer it. Was May 30th, 2024, Game 5 against the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm going to ask you, let's just start with this first one. And we'll start with the big one. Was it the last game in a Timberwolves uniform for Karl Anthony Towns?
I think so. I think it is. Mm-hmm.
And without going too far into it, who are you looking at? What give a little prediction for the offseason. What do you give someone to play? Fans can look at and be like, maybe him for Cat, maybe him for Cat.
I mean, it's kind of the same suspects that I've been preaching for a couple of years now. I think we need guard play. I think we need dynamic guard play. We saw how effective it is when Luka sits and you can bring in another guard that can create on his own, get his own shot, cause havoc defensively to kick to open guys. I think our second highest paid or like our third highest paid player has to be another guard in this modern NBA. Unless you have some guy like Embiid, but the same thing about Embiid is he's a guy you can give the ball to and he can collapse the defense and he can do it all himself. Karl Anthony Towns is not that guy, in my opinion. So it has to be a guard. So I'm looking at, DeJounte Murray from Atlanta, two-way guy, can play point, has played off ball. I wouldn't hate Trae Young. I mean, it's interesting. It would be a weird move, but I don't hate it. Tyler Hero is another guy that would fit in that plane, former 6 man of the year, still young on a decent contract. Anthony Simons, I like as a young guy who can score, who's played some point. He's played, with Dame Lillard, so he's used to playing, with another dynamic scorer. Obviously straight up for cap might not be right for him. We might have to get a little more there, but those types of players or that type of skill set is what I'm looking for. I want somebody that when Anthony Edwards is out, he can not only run the offense, but can be a dangerous offensive weapon himself with the ball in his hands.
You keep mentioning it. I am getting closer and closer to being okay with us trading for DeJounte Murray because I was just looking at his contract. First of all, he's got 2 years left on it. So 2 more years of DeJounte Murray, presumably year 29 and 30, which is about the same as Cat. He's kind of on the same age trajectory there. And his contract is not a max contract. No. He's on a 4-year, $114 million contract. So next year he's getting paid $27 million. The year after that, he's getting paid $29 million. And I think that's
which is like 20 less than Cat.
Yes, it is. Kind of think just a little more than a Jaden contract. So think of what you're getting for DeJounte Murray for Jaden. And I think the Atlanta Hawks would do it. I really think they would do it because it's obviously not working what they're doing. Exactly. It's obviously not working. And you throw in a defensive-minded scorer like DeJounte Murray on this team against – it's just another guy you can throw on Luka and you can throw on Kyrie. And I'm not saying that DeJounte Murray can stop Kyrie and Luka, but it gives us a much better chance. And another thing, and I was thinking about this as I was preparing for today's podcast, this might be the first time in Wolves history, I'm talking, what are we, 35 years, 36 years, something like that, where we go into an offseason trying to put together a team to beat another team. Basically, every other time in Wolves history, it was, let's put together a team that can compete. Let's put together a team that can maybe make the playoffs. Now it's, we know who we got to beat. We know who is the bump in our road. Let's go get the players to try to beat them.
And fine tuning. Like we're at a point now where we have big successful pieces on our roster. Like you were saying, Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker has a role and he's on a cheap contract. Now we can move some of those bigger pieces and fill in and build correctly around a guy like Anthony Edwards, not just, oh, dang, this Anthony Edwards guy's turned out to be a superstar, kind of smushed in the middle of this other, guy we thought was a superstar. Let's make it work. We can now finesse it in a way where it does work.
Right. And by the way, I'm back. But I think that, like I said, I think Atlanta would try something new. I really think they would, because it obviously is not working in Atlanta the way that it is constructed. I mean, they made the play-in this year again and barely didn't even make the playoffs this year. It's clear that a two ball dominant guard system isn't working in Atlanta, but it might work here. And to address some of the other ones, like you said, Anthony Simons would be a nice add.
Portland would love to have a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, who's a guaranteed 20 and 10 guy that you can plug in at a big to play the big position. Like they don't have, I mean, they've got who's that other former number 1 pick they just picked up?
Scoot.
No. The big guy from the
Ayton?
Suns. Yeah, they got DeAndre Ayton, and if anything's been proven in these last couple years is that multiple bigs work.
Right.
So you've got a threat, and you've got a constant guy there, and they've got plenty of money to spend, so that could be a thing. And Scoot, and moving Anthony Simons opens up more playing time for Scoot, and they've got plenty of cap room, so that could be a team. The Heat, they kind of fell apart. They could use a big score. I get it. Jimmy Butler and Cat, everybody's all feisty about that. But here's the deal. Jimmy Butler needs a contract. He's getting older. And I don't think Pat Riley is the kind of guy who gives a damn what Jimmy Butler really thinks about some childish, sassy little fight he had with some guy a couple years ago. Like, he's trying to win games. So these are all guys I think are would fit there, and those are all guards that I think teams might be looking to move. I mean, Tyler
Right.
Hero was talked about to be moved for a couple years now.
Right. And you think about it, like just talking about the Anthony Simons one, I know he's had some injury problems, but
Yeah.
he's only 26 years old. He's got one year left on his contract. And how about this? Anthony Simons, and throw in like Malcolm Brogdon. Then guess what? You have scoring on you have scoring in the starting lineup, and then you can throw. Could you imagine the 1-2 punch of Naz Reid and Malcolm Brogdon? I mean, that would be
I mean,
great, at least offensively.
there's a lot of stuff we can do. And what, like you were saying, I think it might be important to move one piece and get multiples back. I do
Right.
believe that with this new salary cap structure the way it is, I think it's possible that teams are going to start, or what I'm seeing is there's a lot of value in these guys making like 10 to 12 million dollars. I think guys that were making maybe 18 million dollars in the past are now going to be making 8 to 12 million dollars because there's just not room for them to eat anymore, because the max guys are still going to be max guys. So if
Right.
you can fill your roster out better with stronger role players, you've got a stronger sense of what you can do and just more versatility come playoffs. I think what happened in this Dallas series is we ran into a team that we didn't have an answer for. Like, Chris Finch didn't have a card to play versus some of these guys. And, it's just a roster construction issue.
Yeah, I agree. And like I was saying, we got to build now to beat Dallas. We got to build now to beat Boston. We can't be building to just be a nice team and just make the playoffs and see what happens. We got to be intentional, and I think Tim Connolly knows that. You got to build with intention, and I think he is going to do it. So, if you had to make an ultimate prediction, we have a long summer to talk about
Yeah.
this. Long summer. And of course, stick with running with the Timberwolves, because we got to also talk about the litigation that's going to go on between A-Rod and Glenn Taylor. There's so much to talk about, but if you had to predict, who do you think Cats gets traded for? If you had to predict right now.
Predicting's hard. I'll tell you what my dream is.
Yep,
My
go
dream
ahead.
would be Cat going to Atlanta for DeJounte Murray and Bogdanovich. It works cap wise. We would end up getting a small forward / shooting guard / point guard in Bogdanovich, who can, run the point a little bit, can be a ball creator. He's also a big time 3-point shooter. And then DeJounte Murray. I think that would be a huge plus for us. Opens up some wing players for them. They've got an abundance of wings over there. They're trying to figure out what to do with. And I think that would be the way to go. It would also help maybe sometimes when Jaden isn't being effective, we have a guy that we can plug in as a small forward that can give us offensive punch. I think that's another big hurdle that we have to clear, is a way to get more offensive impact in the starting lineup outside of Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns.
And let me ask you one more question with Atlanta. Do you think, or would they give up? Would the Wolves have any interest in their number 1 overall pick?
I 100%. I think they would. I mean, I don't know how that would work. I don't know if they would give it up. I know it's talked about as a bad draft. Some people have joked around about like a guy like Austin Reeves could be traded straight up for the number 1 pick because it's that type of draft. But that 7'1" dude, Scar or something like that,
Yeah.
he's a beast. I like a lot of him. And I would love to have him on our roster as a guy to kind of to work behind Rudy and learn from his game, because he's the type of big that I think the NBA is going. He's a lot like a Wembanyama type big, where he's mobile, he can guard the perimeter and protect the rim.
Yeah. And we'll continue to talk about this going forward. But Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem, man. It was a wonderful season, and keep tuning in. We got a lot to talk about.
We do. Like I said, litigation coming up, free agency. We'll talk about the NBA Finals as well. And just keep it tuned to the Running with the Timberwolves podcast. Also, we're going to do some fun stuff. We're going to do some long form videos as well. I'm going to show some editing chops. We're going to keep it fun during the off season, and let us know the videos that you want us to do as well. Like I know last year, or maybe 2 years ago, we did a tier list of the Wolves jerseys. Let us know what kind of videos you want to see, and then we'll be able to bring them out for you. Anyway, this is the Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple. And as always, go Wolves.